Right now, Missouri gun law now considered unconstitutional.
Some legal challenges from both the gun rights community as well as possibly the General Assembly.
In favor of the bill argue they passed it not to nullify federal law, but to defend Missourians from federal government overreach.
Seem to only support the Second Amendment on its face, declaring as invalid all federal laws that infringe on the right to bear arms.
Right, so you have a conservative majority that said the Second Amendment protects this landmark decision.
That this bill would ban weapons that are in common use in the United States today.
Supreme Court denies protection. All right, buckle up because we've got some legal drama on our hands. So picture this. Missouri, like many other states, wanted to flex its muscles when it comes to gun rights. They passed this thing called the Second Amendment Preservation Act, basically saying, hey feds, back off from our Second Amendment rights. It's like Missouri was drawing a line in the sand, saying they'd protect their citizens' gun rights from any federal overreach. But here's where it gets spicy. The U.S. government wasn't having any of it. They swooped in, waving their legal arguments, and said, sorry Missouri, but your law is unconstitutional.
Right now, Missouri gun law now considered unconstitutional.
Continuing to meddle in city business, they've done that on a whole host, not just public safety, but this has been designed to withstand that.
That law? The Second Amendment Preservation Act. It was originally passed by Missouri lawmakers nearly a year and a half ago.
Has done their own variation version of it. And so there's a lot of levers and nuance, again, and complexity to making sure that these are done correctly.
Come from God, not man. And so if the General Assembly wants to expand upon those rights, they're entitled to do so, and that's what SAPA stands for.
And you should have a right to bear arms in this amazing country that we all live in, but you should be responsible in bearing those arms.
They argued that Missouri is reading the Second Amendment all wrong and that they couldn't just ignore federal laws they didn't like. Now, Missouri wasn't about to back down without a fight. They took the case all the way to the big leagues, the Supreme Court. They were hoping for a Hail Mary pass, asking the court to basically give their law the green light and let them keep doing their thing. But alas, it wasn't meant to be. The Supreme Court, in an 8-1 decision, slammed the door shut on Missouri's hopes. They said, sorry folks, but this law of yours? Yeah, it's a no-go. And just like that, Missouri's Second Amendment Preservation Act found itself on the losing end of the legal battle. So what does this mean for Missouri and its gun-toting citizens? Well, it means they can't rely on their state law to shield them from certain federal gun regulations. It's a tough blow for those who champion states' rights and gun freedoms, but hey, that's the nature of the legal beast sometimes. Missouri's 2A sanctuary law. Alright, let's dive into the backstory of Missouri's Second Amendment Preservation Act. Picture this. It's 2021 and Missouri lawmakers are feeling feisty about firearms. They decide to take matters into their own hands and pass what they call the Second Amendment Preservation Act. Sounds pretty fancy, right? So what's the deal with this law? Well, first off, it's all about interpreting the Second Amendment. You know, that one bit in the Constitution about the right to bear arms? Yeah, that one. Missouri wanted to make sure they were crystal clear on what that meant for their state. But here's the kicker. They didn't stop there, oh no. Missouri had bigger plans. They also wanted to stick it to the feds a bit. You see, they weren't too keen on some of those federal gun laws, so they decided to put their foot down and say, hey state officials, hands off our Second Amendment rights. And just to make sure everyone got the message loud and clear, they threw in a little something extra. Civil remedies. That's right, if any state official dared to help enforce those pesky federal laws, they'd be in for a world of legal hurt. Missouri basically said, you mess with our gun rights, you pay the price. Now here's where it gets interesting. Missouri wasn't the only state playing this game, oh no. They were just following in the footsteps of their buddy Texas and its infamous abortion law SB 8. You remember that one, right? Instead of relying on the state to enforce the law, they put the power in the hands of everyday folks. If someone violated the law, you could bet your bottom dollar there'd be a civil suit coming their way. And that's the gist of Missouri's Second Amendment Preservation Act. It's like they took a page out of Texas's playbook and decided to run with it. Whether it's a stroke of genius or a recipe for legal chaos, well, I guess that's up for debate. But one thing's for sure, Missouri isn't backing down when it comes to their gun rights.
Some legal challenges from both the gun rights community as well as possibly the General Assembly of
the state of Missouri is asking the U.S. Supreme Court to revive a controversial gun law turns law-abiding gun owners into felons is a result of unelected bureaucrats simply enacting a new regulation.
Many gun owners and people who want to buy a gun might have questions about how these new laws affect them.
Also, this bill was written with constitutionality in mind, so I definitely had a good feeling.
Legal challenges. All right, now let's unpack the legal drama surrounding Missouri's Second Amendment Preservation Act. So picture this. The U.S. government wasn't too thrilled about Missouri's bold move to protect its gun rights. They saw it as a direct challenge to federal authority and decided to take Missouri to court. Their main beef? They argued that Missouri was totally twisting the Second Amendment out of shape. According to them, the law was like a bad game of telephone where Missouri got the message all wrong. They claimed that by limiting the enforcement of federal gun laws, Missouri was overstepping its bounds and trampling on the Constitution. Now let's fast forward to the courtroom showdown. The district court was the battleground, and boy did things get heated. After hearing arguments from both sides, the court came down hard on Missouri. They agreed with the government's take and slapped Missouri with an injunction.
But a federal judge's ruling today is likely not the end of the legal battle.
Preemptively taking away citizens' God-given rights.
A federal judge has ruled Missouri's Second Amendment Preservation Act is unconstitutional.
City leaders call these two new proposals sensible gun ownership, but they are going to withstand.
Favor of the bill argue they passed it not to nullify federal law, but to defend Missourians from federal government overreach.
The Second Amendment Preservation Act basically declared that any federal statutes that impose taxes and fees.
Translation? Missouri couldn't enforce their previous Second Amendment Preservation Act. It was like a big red stop sign halting them in their tracks. But here's the kicker. Missouri's law was designed to be sneaky. Instead of relying on the state to enforce it, they put the power in the hands of the people. Civil suits were the name of the game. If someone felt their Second Amendment rights were being violated, they could take matters into their own hands and sue. And that's where things get tricky. You see, normally, when a court issues an injunction, it's like waving a magic wand and poof, the law just disappears. But with Missouri's law, it's not that simple. Since the enforcement relies on individuals filing suit, a blanket injunction against the state doesn't really cut it. So while the district court may have put the brakes on Missouri's enforcement, the battle is far from over. With the law's unique enforcement mechanisms, it's like a legal game of whack-a-mole, and you can bet Missouri isn't going down without a fight. Court proceedings. Alright, let's talk about courtroom drama. So after the district court threw down the hammer and slapped Missouri with that injunction, you can bet they weren't about to take it lying down. Oh no. They decided to roll the dice and take their case to the next level, the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals. Their game plan? Well, first off, they wanted to hit the pause button on that pesky injunction. They figured, hey, let's put a hold on things until we sort this mess out. So they asked the 8th Circuit for a little something called a stay, basically begging them to hold off on enforcing the injunction while they made their case. But here's where things took a turn for the worse. The 8th Circuit wasn't feeling too generous that day. Nope, they shot down Missouri's stay request faster than you could say objection. It was like a legal gut punch, leaving Missouri scrambling for Plan B. So what's the state to do when all else fails? Well, if you're Missouri, you shoot for the stars and go straight to the big guns, the Supreme Court. They filed an emergency appeal, hoping the highest court in the land would swoop in and save the day. But alas, it wasn't meant to be.
We're talking about the Second Amendment Preservation Act, often referred to as SAPA, passed in 2021.
I think it would benefit the police departments themselves to have these federal agencies at their disposal.
Individuals' right to keep and bear arms. Well, what does that mean, right? Like,
gun laws challenging the way we restrict some people from accessing gun laws. So
the Supremacy Clause establishes that the federal government and the federal Constitution.
And tonight we are going in depth with the impact it has on law enforcement leaders and even all of you at home.
The Supreme Court, with the exception of Justice Thomas, basically shrugged their shoulders and said, sorry folks, not our problem. And just like that, Missouri's hopes for a stay went up in smoke. So where does that leave us now? Well, let's just say that it's a bit of a legal limbo. With the Supreme Court's denial, the future of Missouri's Second Amendment Preservation Act hangs in the balance. Will it be enforced? Will it be struck down? Only time will tell, my friends. Only time will tell. Uncertain future. All right, now hold on to your hats, folks, because we've got a plot twist in this legal saga. So picture this. Everyone's gearing up for the big showdown in the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals. The lawyers are sharpening their arguments, the judges are dusting off their gavels, and Missouri is ready to make their case. But then, out of nowhere, the 8th Circuit drops a shocker. They're removing the case from their calendar. And just like that, it's gone. Poof. Talk about throwing a curveball. Now you might be wondering, what gives? Why would they do that? Well, my friends, that's the million-dollar question. This unexpected move has left everyone scratching their heads and scrambling for answers. What does this mean for the future of Missouri's Second Amendment Preservation Act? Well, let's just say that it's anyone's guess at this point. With the case off the calendar, it's like we're stuck in legal limbo. Will the 8th Circuit reschedule? Will they dismiss the case altogether? Nobody knows for sure. But one thing's for certain, this decision has injected a heavy dose of uncertainty into the mix. The fate of Missouri's law hangs in the balance, and until the 8th Circuit makes their next move, we're all just sitting on the edge of our seats waiting with bated breath. So buckle up, you guys, because this legal roller coaster is far from over. The 8th Circuit unexpected twist has thrown everything up in the air, and until the dust settles, we'll just have to wait and see what happens next.
Seemed to only support the Second Amendment on its face, declaring as invalid all federal laws that infringe on the right to bear arms.
When it comes to gun cases, where is this case leaning so far? How are they leaning?
Part that the association and the state's 4 million gun owners are committed to fighting the legislation.
Prevented local law enforcement from enforcing federal gun laws.
That this bill would ban weapons that are in common use in the United States today.
Right, so you have a conservative majority that said the Second Amendment protects this landmark decision.
That's going to do it for this video, you guys. See you next time, and bye for now.